at this morning as we get into this. There's his stateroom, about 301 is what he took to get. No, that's not Paul's boat. Okay, but that was the only boat I could come up with on short notice. So Paul's journey to Rome. If you remember, he just got done talking to King Agrippa, and Agrippa turned to Festus and said, "Man, I don't even understand why you're even having this guy jailed. There is no reason, there is nothing that he should have been jailed for, nothing he should have been on trial for. But because he said he wanted to go to the Supreme Court, he wanted to go to Caesar, we have to send him there." And so that's where we're at. And so they're down in Jerusalem, down here in the corner, and we're going to follow him as it goes along here. Starting with Acts chapter 27, verse 1, it says, "When it was decided that we should sail for Italy." Now, did you notice there's something, it was decided that we, who's the we? Well, it's Luke. Luke was writing this. But for a long portion of this time, while Paul was actually in prison, all we heard about was Paul. We didn't hear a we. Luke wasn't really with him. He was just writing the historical points of it. But now Luke's back with Paul. When it was decided that we should sail for Italy, and we're going to come up with a bunch of names that I know I can't pronounce. How's that? Paul and some other prisoners were handed over to a centurion named Julius, who belonged to the imperial regiment. Now, Julius is going to play an important part in this story, because as they go along, Julius and Paul apparently work up some kind of a relationship, a friendship, as they go through this. And so we boarded a ship from Adramyttium, about to sail for the ports along the coast of the province of Asia, and we put out to sea. Okay. Aristarchus, a Macedonian from Thessalonica, was with us. So he's got Luke and he's got this other person. This person was the one who went with Paul when they went back to Jerusalem and brought the money, and they brought the money into Jerusalem. This is the person that they sent with him. And so it's not the first time we've seen him, and so he and Paul have a relationship, and so he's going with Paul up to Rome. The next day we landed at Sidon, and Julius, in kindness to Paul, allowed him to go to his friends so that they might provide for his needs. Look at that. He didn't say that he kept him there under guard, under lock and key, and told the church to come to him. He said he allowed Paul to go there so that they can take care of his needs. That's how much he cared. That's how much he understood that Paul would be back. He's not a flight risk. This town, this Sidon, is a strange place. I think I've got it down here. So Sidon, they got up here, part of Syria, and Sidon was the oldest city at the time, and it was the largest. The only one that passed it up is Tyre, one of the cities near it, and it happens shortly after this time frame. It's about 20 miles south of modern-day Beirut. It's known for its timber. It had a lot of lumber there. Also known for its pagan worship, especially of this blank screen. There's actually a picture of Baal here, and there's another goddess that they worship. Let's see if that one came through. This one came through, and this is really funny because this is the only statue of her that I felt comfortable putting on the screen. Everything else I'd be embarrassed to put up in church. She was a goddess of fertility, as was Baal, but in a lot of cases they used her as the temple. The temple prostitutes were part of her regime. Let's put it that way. And she's a goddess of fertility. Baal's a goddess of fertility. Let me give you some information. Baal was the supreme god, is the way they believed it. God of fertility, who the people believed who enabled the earth to produce crops and people to produce children. The Canaanite mythology, Baal was the son of El, the chief god, and Asherah, the goddess of the sea. Baal was the most powerful god, more powerful than El, who was they considered very weak and ineffective. Baal's sisters or consorts were Ashtoreth. Yeah, this person that we're talking about here, this gal. This is who the Sidons worship. She was a fertility goddess, and the other sister was Aneth, a goddess of love and war. So this is where they're at. The church that is coming to meet Paul's needs was started by the folks that ran when they martyred Stephen. Jesus never went to this place. He went to the borders, he went to the area, but he never went here to preach. And none of the apostles have been here, and this is the first time that Paul's been here while he's on his way to Rome, is where we're at. So known for the pagan worship of Baal and Ashtoreth. He was never visited by Jesus, but he did visit its borders and surrounding area. Had a Christian church founded by the laymen who had fled the persecution surrounding Stephen, who was now being visited by Paul as a prisoner on his final journey to Rome. Isn't it amazing how God can continue to use this no matter what's going on? Here we've got a prisoner that's preaching the gospel. Because Paul's not going to be silent. He loves to tell the story to those who knew it best, right? He's preaching to the Sidons, the church there, as they're ministering to him and feeding him and taking care of whatever wounds or whatever he might have, and he's preaching to them. And so, Sidon here. So that's where they're at. And we're told now in verse 4, from there we put out to sea again and passed to the lee of Cyprus because the winds were against us. It is believed that it was late fall by this time, maybe even early winter, and the winds are blowing hard, and so they went to the lee side, Cyprus. It says, and we had sailed across an open sea off the coast of Sicilia and Pamphylia, and we landed at Myra in Lycia. Yeah, sure we did. Okay, let's see where that's at. The shortest route would have been what? Come across here. Well, that's where they couldn't go because of the wind blowing so hard. So they followed the coastline, went to the side of Cyprus and went up to Myra, and that's where they're at, trying to keep out of the wind. Verse 6. There the centurion found an Alexandrian ship sailing for Italy and put us on board. So they found a bigger ship, a better ship that might be able to handle the winds, and that's what they were going to go by. And we made slow headway for many days and had difficulty arriving off Sindus. So that's where they're at. And when the wind did not allow us to hold our course, we sailed to the lee of Crete opposite Salmon. We moved along the coast with difficulty and came to a place called Fair Havens. I can say that one. Near the town of Lasa. So Fair Havens, they came down here, and here's Fair Havens in Crete. And that's where they put in. It's not a very good port for the wintertime. The ships are bashed against the docks. The winds are very strong there, and so they're going to have to leave. Verse 9. Much time had been lost, and sailing had become dangerous because by now it was after the Day of Atonement, and so Paul warned them. Men, I can see that our voyage is going to be disastrous and bring great loss to ship and cargo and to our own lives also. But the centurion, instead of listening to what Paul said, followed the advice of the pilot and the owner of the ship. Why were the pilot and the owner of the ship so headstrong on leaving? Money, right? They have a crop of wheat that they're trying to get rid of. They don't want to have to house that wheat the entire winter. They want to get to where it's supposed to go to get their funds. The centurion, looking at the town and thinking, boy, I've got the rest of my folks here, my other guards, and there's absolutely nothing to do here. I want to get back to Rome. I want to get back to Italy. Hey, I've been there. I've been stopped in places that I did not want to be, and I would have taken a broken down plane to get out of there. And that's kind of what they're at. And he's saying, though the wind's strong, and we want to go. And the centurion, instead of listening to Paul, who warned them that life was at risk if they went, they ignored him. Since the harbor was unsuitable to winter, the majority decided that they should sail on, hoping to reach Phoenix and winter there. Phoenix is 60 miles away. 60 miles away. This was a harbor in Crete facing both southwest and northwest. Consider it pure joy when you have trials. And that's what Paul's going through. That's what the people in the ship are going through. All 270 some of them. They're going through trials because the wind's keeping them from getting where they need to go. But we've been told, consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kind, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything. James 1:12. Blessed is the one who perseveres under trial, because having stood the test, that person will receive the crown of life that the Lord has promised to those who love him. Here's the message, 2 Peter 2:9. So God knows how to rescue the godly from evil traits, and he knows how to hold the feet of the wicked to the fire until judgment day. We all face temptations. We all face trials. And so many people today, they give in to those trials. When things start getting tough, no matter what it is, they just stop and just back off and find a different way to do it. The trials are there. They help us to grow. I enjoyed nothing more than having a very complicated wiring problem on a plane. Oh, I love that. I'd work day and night. There's times I wouldn't come home. Man, give me the challenge, because it makes us a better person. Through those challenges, my supervisors saw what kind of a person I was, that I'm not going to give up. We had guys that would give up in a heartbeat. When I got to Germany the last time, I walked in, and they had been working on a plane that had a flap problem. I know this is things that probably many of you don't care much about, but this is what it was. There were 3 people there that had worked on this for 2 weeks, and they were calling a depot outfit to have somebody come in and show them how to fix this. And I looked at them, I says, don't you ever call them while I'm here. Walked out to the plane, and in 2 minutes, showed them what the problem was. They said, well, nobody's ever shown us that. You didn't try either. Huh? All it amounted to is that the wind pressure underneath the wing will move your flaps up a little bit. And they weren't moving them. You have to simulate air sometimes. And when they got that, they got their problem. Well, how do we fix that? Adjust the switch. But now I have a colonel who's already seen them working on this for 2 weeks, and he says, well, that's impossible. That's not going to happen. I guarantee it. He said, okay, you put your stripes on the line? Yes, sir, I sure do. And you have to have a plane fly 3 times without the same write-up for it to be fixed. It flew the first time, came down in great shape. Commander comes across and says, that's 1. Second time it flew, came down great shape. He comes across and says, that's 2. Third time it flew, it came down in great shape, never heard a thing on the radio. So I got on and called him. I said, that's 3. We had a great relationship after that, because he knew I was not going to give up. Paul did not give up. God tells us, don't give up. I'm there. I'm going to support you. I'm going to back you 100%. So they're in Fairhaven. They're going to Phoenix, 60 miles away. That's their plan. They're going to harbor there for the winter. Acts 27:13. When a gentle south wind began to blow, they saw their opportunity. Piece of cake. We'll jump in, go to 60 miles. We've got a little wind blowing us. Fantastic. And so they weighed anchor and they sailed along the shore of Crete. Before very long, a wind of hurricane force, called the northeaster, swept down from the island. And the ship was caught by the storm and could not head into the wind. And so we gave way to it and were driven along. There was absolutely nothing they could do. The wind was blowing them, hurricane force wind, waves all over the place, crashing, sending the ship up and down and throwing it all over. I've been in hurricanes. We understand what that's like. Wow. I can't imagine being on a ship like this and going through it when you have absolutely no control. Wow. And as we passed to the lee of a small island called Cauda, we were hardly able to make lifeboats secure. And so the men hoisted it aboard, and then they passed ropes under the ship itself to hold it together. So they're afraid that the whole ship's going to come apart. They brought the lifeboats up on top of the deck, and they somehow put ropes underneath and pulled them up and pulled them tight to keep the ship from splitting apart. Wow. That's how scared they were. They couldn't head to shore, even if they could, because afraid the ship would just smash on the shore. Wow. Because they were afraid they would run around on the sandbars of Sidon. That's why they were tying it together. And they lowered the anchor and let the ship be driven along. So they didn't want to be crashed on these sandbars, and so they lowered the anchor, hoping that would stop them from going that way. And we took such a violent battering from the storm that the next day they began to throw the cargo overboard to keep it afloat. And on the third day, they threw the ship's tackle overboard with their own hands. Everything else they had, over it went. When neither sun nor stars appeared for many days and the storm continued raging, we finally gave up all hope of being saved. Think what you would do out at sea. I've told you, I panic. I would panic. I don't like things being underneath me that I can't see, especially things that are as big as, yeah, I mean, what are they? Some of these whales are, something touched my, it could be a piece of seaweed touch my foot and I'd have a heart attack, you know? The storm continued raging. They're being thrown all over the place, not for 1 day, not for 2 days, not for 3 days, but for many days. And after they had gone a long time without food, Paul stood up before them and said, "Men, you should have taken my advice not to sail from Crete. I told you. Then you would have spared yourselves this damage and loss. Wow. But now I urge you to keep up your courage, because not one of you will be lost, only the ship will be destroyed. Last night an angel of the God whom I belong and whom I serve stood beside me and said, 'Do not be afraid, Paul. You must stand trial before Caesar, and God has graciously given you the lives of all who sail with you.'" And so Paul's telling them this. And these guys have been battered. They've been thrown about, you know. I'm sure some of them have probably come close to being swept out to sea. And he's saying, don't worry. Yep, we're going to lose the ship, but all of us are going to live. Oh, yeah? We have nothing else on the ship except for the cargo itself. And your God's going to give us safe passage. We're going to live. He says, so keep up your courage, men, for I have faith in God that will happen just as He told me. That's the kind of faith we're supposed to have. When trials come our way, we should depend and put our faith in God. We know that at the other end of it, we're going to come out even better. It's going to come out better. Sometimes it's hard to see when you're right there in it. But we have to remember, our God will see us through. And He gives us the strength to do that. So it says, nevertheless, we must run aground on some island. We have to run aground on an island. Matthew 24:13. But the one who stands firm to the end will be saved. Paul says, stand firm to the end. Yep, we're going to run aground. The ship's going to be destroyed, but we're all going to live. It's hard to imagine that. Hard to imagine that. My brother was in the Navy. He was on some big ship, I don't know. And I told him, well, I couldn't do that because of that fear I have of all that stuff underneath me. And he says, well, if you're in the water, you got a bigger problem. There's something wrong with the boat, or the ship. We got to remember, we're in a great ship. We have a great pilot at that ship. We have God. And there's nothing that can tear that apart. The one who stands firm to the end will be saved. 1 Corinthians 15:58. Therefore, dear brothers and sisters, stand firm. Let nothing move you. Always give yourselves fully to the work of the Lord, because you know that your labor in the Lord is not in vain. Back to Acts. Verse 27. On the 14th night, get that, 14 days of hurricane force winds. I don't know if we ever had 14 days of hurricane winds. Did we, Joni? Joni spent more time in the hurricanes than I did. See, when you're a military person, they ship you out. And we shipped out really fast. And Joni stayed with the hurricane. And so sometimes we were gone for 2-3 weeks as the hurricane kind of chased us around. So on the 14th night, we were still being driven across the Adriatic Sea. And when about midnight, the sailors sensed that they were approaching land, and they took soundings and found that the water was 120 feet deep. A short time later, they took soundings again and found that it was 90 feet deep. They're getting close to shore. Fearing that we would be dashed against the rocks, they dropped 4 anchors from the stern and prayed for daylight. In an attempt to escape from the ship, the sailors let the lifeboat down into the sea. But what did Paul tell them before? No one must leave. Pretending that they were going to lower some anchors from the bow. So here we've got, you see the zigzag? The zigzag's where they're at. That's what's happening. They're just kind of bouncing around out there, not really doing anything. Huh? And so they didn't want to get stuck on these sandbars down here off of Africa. They didn't want to get stuck down there and run aground and crash and be taken care of there. And so they're out there. Now they've lowered the lifeboats, pretending that they're going to drop some more anchors, and their intention is to get out of there. John 14:6. Jesus answered, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. We have to believe. 1 Timothy 2:5. For there is one God and one mediator between God and mankind, the man Christ Jesus. Salvation is found in no one else. For there is no greater name under heaven given to mankind by which we must be saved. The sailors were trying to do what? Save themselves. Under their what? Their own abilities. Instead of depending on God, which is what Paul told them to do. Have faith. Stand firm. God's going to take care of us. And all they could see is their ship being dashed. And I'm sure they're thinking, what is this Pharisee telling me about ships? And I've been a sailor my entire life. Wow. They said, we're getting out of here. 1 Corinthians 3:11. For no one can lay any foundation other than the one already laid, which is Christ Jesus Christ. Back to verse 31. And when Paul said to the centurion and the soldiers, unless these men stay with the ship, you cannot be saved. That's when the centurion fully understood, I think. He didn't quite understand. He felt that Paul had got a raw deal and let him go and be ministered to by the church. But he didn't listen to Paul when Paul says, hey, if we go, your lives are going to be at stake here. He didn't listen to him. But now he's listening. Paul says, unless the men stay with the ship, you cannot be saved. And so the soldiers cut the ropes that held the lifeboats and let it drift away. No way to get away now. Somebody help me out. I'm sure you've heard the story about the conqueror that when he got to a place, he would always burn his boats. Who was that? Anybody remember who that was? And if he burned the boats, he had no way for his people to leave except by taking somebody else's boats. You think that doesn't give you a motivation? They don't have their lifeboats now. They're motivated to pay attention to what Paul's saying. Verse 33. And just before dawn, Paul urged them all to eat. For the last 14 days, he said, you've been in constant suspense and have gone without food. You haven't eaten anything. Now I urge you to take some food. You need it to survive. Not one of you will lose a single hair from his head. And after he said this, he took some bread and gave thanks to God in front of them all. And he broke it and began to eat it. 270-some folks being thrown around in this boat. Paul says, we will all be saved. We will not lose a hair on our head, but we need to eat. And he prayed to his God, showing them his faith. And they were all encouraged, and they ate some food themselves. Altogether, there were 276 of us on board. And when they had eaten as much as they wanted, they lightened the ship by throwing the grain into the sea. They gave up the one thing that they were really holding on to, the money. Sometimes we have to give things up. Acts 27:39. When daylight came, they did not recognize the land, but they saw a bay with a sandy beach, where they decided to run the ship aground if they could. Cutting loose the anchors, they left them in the sea, and at the same time untied the ropes that held the rudders, and they hoisted the foresail to the wind and made for the beach. But the ship struck a sandbar and ran aground. The bow stuck fast and would not move, and the stern was broken to pieces by the pounding of the surf. The soldiers planned to kill the prisoners to prevent them from swimming away and escaping. If a prisoner escaped, the guard that was guarding them would be put to death. So that was their motivation. They wanted to kill these guys. But the centurion wanted to spare Paul's life and kept them from carrying out their plan. And he ordered those who could swim to jump overboard first and get to land. The centurion, I truly feel, believed what Paul was telling him. He understood. He cut away the lifeboats, and now he's telling his soldiers, don't kill any of these people. You're not going to die. The rest were to get there on planks or on other pieces of ship. In this way, everyone would reach land safely. God uses trials. We kind of talked about it already. He uses trials. It causes people to turn to Him for salvation. I don't know, we hear about people that are being pinned under stuff and they turn to God, or people that are having heart attacks and that's the last thing out of their mouth is that they turn to God, or people in foxholes as a war rages on, they turn to God. Sometimes trials cause people to turn to Him for salvation. Sometimes trials are used to prove that a person really trusts Him. This trial that Paul was going through showed those around him that he truly trusted God. When your actions, when people see you going through trials and they see you worrying and fretting and woe is me and all of these things, and they think, well, where's this God that you trust? You know, that doesn't mean we hip hip hooray. I mean, sure, we might be concerned about things, and I've been concerned at times, but I always know that God's going to provide. And we've told that story. You know, Exxon said, here, you've been doing this job for 12 years, but guess what? We don't want you anymore. We're going to let somebody else do it. Wow. Had I been an Exxon employee, I could have retired. Isn't that amazing? I fretted for a little bit, thinking, okay, we got to find something else. The church here can't support us. Got to find another job. And we were getting ready to go to Disney, as a matter of fact. The first time we'd gone with the grandkids. And so I was going to stay home and let Joni go. And my boss there at the refinery says, you know, is it really going to make any difference? And I think Joni even said that. Is it going to make a difference whether you stay here or you go? If you trust God, it doesn't make any difference, does it? And so I went. And I came back. And they kept saying, you know, you understand that we're releasing you. I got that. But I have a great God. You might have shut a door. He's going to open another one. We need to trust Him in the trials. We need to trust Him in the trials. And when Isaac said that this was open, and he talked about how small it was, the town, not the church, that's right up our alley. I don't like big towns. Even this gets a little too big at times. Wow. God knows what God's doing all the time. Wow. I didn't figure I'd ever leave Montana. I like Montana. Because I'd been in southern Idaho, and I didn't really care for it. This is nothing like southern Idaho. Amen. Praise God. God uses trials to prove that a person really trusts Him. And my boss kept saying, this just amazes me. It shouldn't. He and I have had that conversation many, many times. He had been having trouble with family or with other employees and stuff, and he would come in. As a matter of fact, Joni even made a little cup like Lucy had, 5 cents for counseling. And he'd come in and he'd put a nickel in the can all the time. And sometimes he'd come in and put 50 cents. And I thought, oh boy, it's going to be one of those days, huh? So I became his personal counselor. If I didn't show my faith, he wouldn't have trusted me to counsel. Wow. God uses trials to prove that a person trusts Him. God uses trials to make a believer stronger. To make a believer stronger. We can trust God, and when we see it happen, and even when it happens in our lives, I tell people, you see things that happen, and you've been praying about, and you say, man, it just amazed me. Why did it amaze us? Why do we say that? Because that's what we're praying for. I pray, determined that that's exactly what's going to happen, and yet when it happens, I say, wow, why? Didn't we ever believe it was going to happen? Huh? It makes a believer stronger. Is your life like this, tossed about by a storm? Sometimes it gets that way. Sometimes we get battered. Sometimes we get thrown about. Sometimes, different situations happen and deaths happen and we don't understand, and suicides happen. People die in fires, and we read about the Chicago area, 50 people shot on a weekend, last 3 weekends, just crazy things. But through it all, we need to keep our faith. And understanding sometimes the ship that we're on may fall apart. But that's not where my faith is. My faith is in God and God alone. Wow. We're going to leave Paul hanging around out there on a piece of wood for a couple weeks. He'll be ready to get out by the time we come back to it. Okay? But I want us to remember the altars are always open. I encourage you this week to show your faith, to smile in adversity, even when things are bad. I have a habit. When I'm in extreme pain, I laugh. I don't know if anybody else does that. It's crazy. Well, Josh has picked that up. So when Josh he tore his ACL and he got a lot of fluid on his knee, we went in. And I have to tell you, I have never gone in with any of the boys for any shots. I don't like to see my kids hurt. I don't like to see my family hurt. So I've never gone in with them. So here's Josh with his gigantic knee, and the nurse and the doctor come in and say, well, we're going to drain that. And we both start laughing like mad. And they look at us like, what is wrong with you? And we both said about the same time, if we stop, we're going to cry. We can laugh in the hard times. And I can laugh because I know my God's got my hand. There's absolutely nothing that the world can throw at me. Oh, I might get knocked down and drug around a bit, but there's nothing that the world can throw at me that God cannot overcome. And the ultimate overcoming is taking me home. It's a win-win situation. So show your faith, show your love, smile more than you have before. And let people ask, what are you smiling about? Opportunity. If you need to come to Him this morning for prayer or to accept Him as Lord and Savior, if you're being battered around by the storms of life and need a preserver or something thrown to you, we will pray with you and send you on your way, hoping that you smile and remember that God's with you. Awesome. I'll change the song for next week so that it's something more traditional. But let's do this one more time. If you died tonight,